name's Natalie Topa, and I work with the Danish Refugee Council as the Regional Resilience and Livelihoods Coordinator for East Africa and Yemen. I'm here in a village called Mananarua, which is just outside of Kakuma town in Turkana in northwestern Kenya. It's a drylands area, and the reason that we're here is to do a series of small projects to try to increase resilience of this community. When we came here last Saturday, we've had many visits and meetings with the community, but in particular before we started this project this week, we were told by the community that in the time of their grandfathers, years and years ago, this landscape looked very different. There were tall trees, the rangeland was full of grasses for livestock, and there was enough fresh water for everyone. This week, what we're doing is focusing on this community, which is roughly 350 households that live within a watershed that is having a lot of the problems that we're seeing in drylands all over the region and all over the world. Because of degenerative land practices, such as deforestation for domestic fuels, overgrazing of the land, it has thrown the system out of balance.
My name is Warren Brush. I am a consultant working with the Danish Refugee Council, DRC, and I am one of the co-developers of the Resilience Design Program with USAID's Food for Peace programs and a technical advisor for the Permagarden programs. We first started with an A-frame, which is a tool to find the contour of the land, because we want to sink the water in here. We want to protect the garden, and we want to sink the water so that the water now is moving slowly underneath the garden, and we can plant a lot of plants along the berm of this bioswale so that the waters that do come in could be converted into food.
So what we're doing is trying to address a variety of different issues that can help to rebuild and regenerate and restore the ecological function of this place. So for example, in the upper part of the system, near the base of the mountain, we have heavy equipment where we're digging large swales, which are water harvesting structures, to passively harvest all of the water that falls onto the landscape here and soak it into the soil. That will be planted with local trees and of native species and indigenous grasses to help infiltrate that water and bring it back into the groundwater system, as well as rebuild and feed the life in the soil so that the biodiversity can thrive and local foods that people use also can thrive.
The size of them is important because you want to be able to reach to the middle of them, and you don't want to ever step on them, because we put so much energy into this. We dug what's called double dug biointensive bed, where you dig the topsoil off and then you dig down another third of a meter, and you dig the topsoil down and you dig another third of a meter, and you amend that soil, or you add fertility to that soil. So we added things like goat manures, we added things like biochar or charcoal dust, we added leaves from the prosopis, which are high in nitrogen. We did all sorts of bones that we crushed, we put in there, shells, if you have kitchen scraps, anything like that can go into that to put some organic matter and some fertility deep down in the soil. We turned it, we made it really loose, and then we put the topsoil back on. We plant all the plants very close together because their root systems can now go deep down to get their nutrient. And so they can be clustered closer so we can fit more food in the same garden space. The other advantage of that is that once the food is growing, whatever that might be, it creates its own canopy, which helps to protect the soils as well as to prevent the weeds from coming up.
So in this watershed, when it rains, all the rain fans out at the base of the mountains and it rushes through this community, causing flooding, destroying assets, flooding homes, and then it just rushes past them and into a dry riverbed, which used to be an annual river.
We had to work with fencing, so we needed to protect this from camels, from goats, from chickens, just so that what we do plant does come up really well. We also planted some fruit trees, and we also have mulched the garden so that we're protecting against the sun. And yesterday we had the first rain. Right after we planted, we had our first rain here, and so the mulch also protects the soil from actually washing away. We've planted 10 different species of vegetables that we're growing. We also integrated onions and other plants that help with integrated pest management, and we're really starting to get this garden going. Within the next day or two, we'll start to see germination coming up through the mulches.
Here in the community, at the individual households, we're doing swales to address the flood risk that households face, and we're doing permaculture gardens that focus on amending deep soil, doing deep soil amendments and infiltrating water so that even into the dry season, food can be viable. Lower down in the system, where the borehole has dried up and broken several years ago, we're repairing the borehole, but we've also used the heavy machinery to address the active recharge zone and expand the catchment. So we've done earthworks so we can catch more water from the landscape that's rushing off and soaking it into the soil so that it can recharge that borehole, and that borehole can recharge with greater frequency. So we are training them on how to prune and maintain the trees so that they're trained to grow up and high and tall out of the zone where goats get them and spread them around, hopefully reducing that invasiveness a bit, but also making the trees more of a viable resource for the community so they grow strong and tall and straight so that they can use them for building timbers and higher quality charcoal to manage the prosopis in this area. And the good news is there are more solutions than there are problems. This is a question of design and using what we have at hand, understanding these cycles that we're surrounded by, looking at how nature solves problems and trying to imitate that and learn from it. So I'm very excited to come back here, even in a month, and definitely in a year, in 2 years, and 3 years. I am very confident this place is going to look very different, and that the community here is going to will have a lot of benefit in many different ways. So what we're doing here is making a level spillway, so when this entire swale fills with water, it will reach to the line of these blue flags, and that's when it will start to pour out into that drainage area behind us.